You are going to sit down right now, and you are going to listen to me very carefully, because what I am about to say to you is not comfortable. It is not warm. It is not designed to make you feel good about the choices you have been making. You have been lying to yourself. Every single morning, you wake up and the very first thought in your mind is someone else. You think about what they need. You think about what they expect. You think about whether they approved of what you said yesterday, whether they liked your message, whether they are happy with the version of you that you performed for them. You are performing. Did you know that? You are an actor in a play that someone else wrote. And the tragedy, the absolute soul-crushing tragedy, is that you gave them the pen. Ugh. You handed the authorship of your life to people who have not even finished writing their own story. I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with this question until it burns a hole through your chest. When was the last time you sat alone, in complete silence, with no phone, no noise, no distraction, and asked yourself, who am I? What do I actually want? What was I placed on this earth to do? Ah, most of you cannot answer that question. And that is not an accusation. That is a diagnosis. You are a stranger to yourself. You know the preferences of your friends. You know the schedules of your colleagues. You know the opinions of people on the internet whose faces you have never seen. But you do not know yourself. You cannot describe your own soul. You cannot articulate your own purpose. You are living inside a house you have never explored. And while you are busy studying everybody else's life, their relationships, their careers, their drama, their highlight reels, your own potential, was sitting in a dark corner, collecting dust, slowly dying. Today, that ends. I want to tell you a story. There was once a man, let us call him Emmanuel, who was the most gifted architect in his entire region. His hands could design structures that made people weep with beauty. His mind could look at a plot of land and see, in perfect detail, the building that was meant to rise from it. He designed schools where thousands of children went on to discover their destinies. He designed hospitals where life was saved and where human beings were given second chances. He designed churches where broken people walked in, carrying the weight of their failures, and walked out with something resembling hope. Emmanuel was brilliant. Emmanuel was generous. Emmanuel was always available. Someone needed a design? Call Emmanuel. Someone needed advice on load-bearing walls, on foundation depth, on roofing systems. Emmanuel was there. He would cancel his evenings. He would sacrifice his weekends. He would answer the calls at midnight because he was, as everybody said, a good man. A good man. You know what they put on his gravestone? A good man. That was his entire legacy, reduced to 3 words. 3 words that described how he made other people feel, and said absolutely nothing about what he built for himself. Because here is the part of the story that nobody talks about at Emmanuel's funeral. Emmanuel, the man who built mansions for others, Emmanuel lived in a shack. I am not speaking metaphorically right now. I am telling you the literal truth of this story. While he was drawing blueprints for other people's dream homes, his own roof was leaking. While he was selecting marble flooring for a client's corridor, his own floor was cracked concrete. While he was advising wealthy families on which wing of the house would catch the morning sun, his own windows had cardboard where the glass should have been. And when people asked him, when they dared to ask him, "Emmanuel, when are you going to build your own home?" he would smile that tired, generous smile and say, "Soon, when I finish this project, when things slow down, when I have more time." He died at 63. The house was never built. He died in the shack. He died surrounded by the blueprints of other people's fulfilled dreams. He died with every tool he needed to build something extraordinary, every skill, every knowledge, Every gift locked inside a man who had given all of his hours to everyone except himself. And I need you to understand something. I need this to land in the deepest part of your soul. Emmanuel is not a sad story about a man who was unlucky. Emmanuel is your story. Right now, today, you are Emmanuel. You are pouring your energy, your creativity, your emotional bandwidth, your intellectual horsepower, your time, which is the only truly non-renewable resource you possess. You are pouring all of it into building structures that carry other people's names. You are working overtime for a company whose owners' children will inherit the wealth you helped create. You are emotionally investing in relationships where you are the giver, and they are perpetually the receiver. You are spending your mental energy managing the feelings, the expectations, the moods, and the crises of people who have never once sat down and asked, "How are you doing? What do you need? What is your dream?" And your own empire, your own destiny, your own purpose, the magnificent structure that God and the universe designed you to construct with your life, it is sitting in ruins, overgrown with weeds, foundation cracked, walls unmade. Because you were too busy being a good person. Now I want to go deeper with you. Because this is not simply about time management. This is not a productivity lecture. What I am addressing today goes to the very root of human existence. Dr. Myles Munroe taught us something that shook the foundations of conventional thinking. He said, "The wealthiest place on the planet is not the oil fields of the Middle East. It is not the gold mines of South Africa. It is not Wall Street. The wealthiest place on this earth is the graveyard. Because buried in that graveyard are symphonies that were never performed. Buried there are books that were never written. Inventions that were never built. Businesses that were never launched. Cures for diseases that the world still suffers from. Buried with the person who had the mind to discover them, but who never took the time to discover themselves first." The graveyard is wealthy because the people buried there never made a withdrawal from their own account. They deposited everything into other people. They gave their best years to institutions that replaced them within 2 weeks of their departure. They gave their creativity to bosses who took the credit. They gave their emotional energy to people who never reciprocated. They gave their love to those who treated it as a transaction. And they died. They died with their real wealth still locked inside, untouched, unused, buried. Now let me ask you the question that every human being must eventually confront. Who are you? Not what do you do, not what is your title, not what does your family expect you to be, not what did your culture program you to become. Who are you? Because if you cannot answer that question, if you have to pause and look around for someone else to confirm your identity, then you do not yet own yourself. And a person who does not own themselves will always be owned by someone else. This is the terrifying truth about human beings. Nature abhors a vacuum. When you do not fill yourself with a clear, unshakable sense of your own identity, your own values, your own purpose, the world rushes in to fill that vacuum for you. Your parents fill it. They say, "You are going to be a doctor," and you spend 30 years becoming something you never wanted to be, achieving goals that were never yours, standing at the summit of a mountain you never wanted to climb, and feeling inexplicably, to everyone around you, completely empty. Your culture fills it, it says. A good person sacrifices. A good person puts others first. A good person never thinks about themselves. And you spend your entire existence performing goodness for an audience, while the actual you, the real, raw, unpolished, powerful you, sits in a cage inside your own chest, screaming to be let out. Social media fills it. It hands you an identity, manufactured by algorithms, shaped by likes, driven by comparison, fueled by the constant need to be witnessed and validated and applauded. And you become a person that is entirely constructed from the outside in. But purpose, real purpose, only flows from the inside out. You cannot give what you do not have. Let me say that again because I need it to echo inside the chambers of your mind. You cannot give what you do not have. You cannot love someone else properly if you have not learned to understand and love who you are. You cannot build someone else's future if you have not first laid the foundation of your own. You cannot lead others into clarity if you are yourself operating in confusion. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. And yet, this is exactly what the world celebrates. The world gives standing ovations to people who pour themselves out completely for others and have nothing left. The world calls them heroes. The world calls them saints. The world eulogizes them beautifully. And then the world moves on. By Monday morning, the people you sacrificed everything for, they move on. Life moves on. And the only person left holding the bill of your self-abandonment is you. Except you are not there anymore, because you gave yourself away in installments, and the account is now at 0. This must stop. Now I am going to say something that is going to make some of you deeply uncomfortable. And your discomfort tells me exactly how badly you need to hear it. You must become obsessed with yourself. Whew. Before you shut this off, before your conditioning kicks in and starts whispering words like selfish and narcissistic and arrogant, I want you to understand what I mean with surgical precision. I am not talking about the shallow, hollow self-obsession of a person who takes photographs of themselves and craves the attention of strangers. That is not self-obsession. That is self-abandonment wearing a costume. That is a person so desperately empty inside that they need the world's eyes on them to feel real. I am talking about something far more powerful, far more terrifying, far more rare. I am talking about the obsession of a person who locks the door, turns off the noise, and begins the ruthless, unflinching excavation of their own soul. I am talking about a person who sits down with themselves alone, in silence, and begins to ask the hard questions. Not what do people need from me, but what was I designed to do? Not how can I make them happy, but what makes me come alive? Not who do they want me to be, but who am I when nobody is watching? This kind of self-examination is not comfortable. It is not a spa retreat. It is not a journaling session with scented candles. It is surgery. And surgery requires that you cut through layers of other people's opinions, other people's expectations, other people's definitions of your value, and you go all the way down to the bedrock of who you actually are. The ancient philosophers understood this. Before Greece produced its greatest thinkers, before the academies of wisdom rose, there was an inscription carved into the stone at the Temple of Delphi. And that inscription said only 2 words: know thyself. Not know thy neighbor, not know thy market, not know thy social media audience. Know thyself. Because they understood, those ancient minds understood that self-knowledge is the beginning of all power. Self-knowledge is the prerequisite of all leadership. Self-knowledge is the foundation upon which every lasting empire of human achievement is built. A person who does not know themselves is dangerous not to others, but to themselves. They drift. They are reactive. They are perpetually shaped by whatever wind is blowing hardest at any given moment. They change their values based on who is in the room. They change their goals based on who is offering approval. They are not a person with a direction. They are a weather vane. And the world is full of weather vanes. spinning, 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 pointing wherever the wind goes and calling it a life. I want to teach you something now about the nature of greatness. Because I have studied the lives of men and women who changed the course of human history, I have examined what separated them from the crowd, and there is a pattern consistent, undeniable, almost eerie in its repetition. Every person who ever built something that outlasted them, every person who ever created something of genuine, world-altering significance, they all went through a period of deliberate disappearance. They withdrew. They stepped back from the crowd. They stepped away from the noise. They resisted the pull of social obligation and the seduction of other people's agendas, and they went inward. Deeply, almost ferociously inward. Moses went into the desert for 40 years before he went back to confront Pharaoh. 40 years, not 40 days, not 40 weeks. 40 years of silence, of obscurity, of being unknown while his gifts were being sharpened in the hidden place. Jesus went into the wilderness for 40 days before his public ministry began. Before he opened his mouth to change the world, he went to the place where there was nothing but himself and what he was made of. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in a prison cell. And when he emerged, he did not emerge broken. He emerged with a clarity of purpose, a depth of character, and an unshakable identity that had been forged in isolation. The prison that was designed to destroy him became the crucible that perfected him. Do you understand what I am telling you? Isolation is not punishment. Solitude is not loneliness. Disappearing from the crowd is not failure. It is preparation. The tree that produces the most fruit is the one whose roots go deepest. And roots do not grow in the light, surrounded by applause and observation. Roots grow in the dark. Roots grow downward, invisible, unacknowledged, without any audience whatsoever. And most people will never develop deep roots because they cannot tolerate the darkness. They cannot survive without being seen. They cannot function without someone watching them, affirming them, commenting on them, clapping for them. They need the crowd the way an addict needs a substance. And like every addiction, it is destroying them while it makes them feel temporarily alive. I want you to do something radical. I want you to disappear. Not forever, not irresponsibly, but deliberately, strategically, and with complete intentionality. I want you to disappear from the noise of other people's expectations and go find yourself. Lock the door. Sit in the silence. Open a journal, not a social media post. A journal, and begin to audit your life with the cold, unflinching precision of a forensic accountant examining a compromised ledger. Ask yourself, what do I actually believe versus what was I told to believe? What do I actually value versus what did I perform valuing to fit into my community? What am I genuinely skilled at, not what I was trained to do to meet someone else's need? What makes my soul expand? What makes me feel like I am operating at the absolute peak of what I was designed to be? When was the last time I felt truly alive, not celebrated, not approved of, not applauded, but alive, in the deepest, most private, most unwitnessed sense of the word? These are the questions of a person who is beginning to take themselves seriously. And taking yourself seriously is not arrogance. It is responsibility. Because you were given a life, one life, singular, non-refundable, with no second edition, and the universe did not give it to you so that you could spend it being useful to everyone else while remaining useless to your own destiny. Let me speak plainly about something that our culture has glorified into a virtue but is, in truth, a quiet catastrophe. People-pleasing. Whew. We have taken the natural human impulse toward connection and community, which is beautiful and necessary, and we have corrupted it into a pathological pattern of self-erasure. We have made a religion of putting everyone else first, and we worship at that altar with such devotion that we consider it moral, we consider it holy, we consider it the mark of a good human being. Let me dismantle that for you. A person who cannot say no is not generous. They are afraid. A person who agrees with everyone has not embraced tolerance. They have abandoned their own convictions. A person who is always available to others and never available to themselves has not achieved selflessness. They have achieved self-destruction, slowly, politely, with a smile on their face. People-pleasing is fear wearing the mask of virtue. It is the terror of rejection dressed up as kindness. It is the desperate need for approval pretending to be love. And its consequences are severe. When you spend your life managing the emotions and expectations of others, you do not develop yourself, you deplete yourself. You do not grow, you shrink. You do not expand into who you were meant to be. You contract, perpetually, into whoever the room needs you to be at any given moment. And then one day, and this day comes for every person who has lived this way, one day you wake up and you look in the mirror, and you do not recognize the person looking back at you. Because the person in the mirror has spent 30, 40 years shape-shifting for other people, and somewhere in all that shifting, the original was lost. You traded yourself. You traded your identity, your time, your energy, your dreams, your voice. You traded it all for the currency of approval. And now you hold vast wealth in a currency that buys you absolutely nothing of lasting value. The approval of people expires. Their admiration is conditional. Their gratitude is short. The person who praised you loudly last year will forget your name the year after, while the dreams you abandoned to earn that praise are still waiting, patient, aching, persistent in the graveyard of your neglected potential. Now I want to bring you back to Emmanuel, the architect who died in his shack. Because the lesson of Emmanuel is not simply that he neglected himself. The lesson, the deeper, more devastating lesson, is that he had everything he needed to build something magnificent for himself. He had the skill, he had the knowledge, he had the tools, he had the experience. Every resource required to build a great house was already in his possession. The only thing he lacked was the decision. The decision to turn the gift inward. The decision to say, I am also worthy of the excellence I produce for others. I am also deserving of the same quality of architecture that I offer to the world. My life is also a project worth designing. And I am speaking to every person watching this right now. You have the resources. You have more capacity inside of you than you have ever fully explored, because you have been too busy exploring other people's territory. The gifts that the world benefits from when you apply them to others, those same gifts, turned toward your own life, toward your own development, toward your own purpose, they would build something extraordinary. But you have to make the decision. You have to decide consciously, deliberately, without apology, that you are the primary project of your own life. Not the secondary project, not the project you get to after everything and everyone else is handled. The primary project, the central investment, the first priority. This is not selfishness. Let me be very clear about this, because I know how the human mind, conditioned by decades of social programming, will immediately reach for that accusation. Selfishness is taking from others for your own gain. What I am describing is the opposite. I am describing the act of developing yourself so thoroughly, so deeply, so completely, that what you then offer the world is not the scraps of a depleted person, but the overflow of a full one. There is a difference, a vast, critical difference between a river and a drain. A drain takes in until it is overwhelmed and backs up and floods the space around it. A river draws from a deep, inexhaustible source and flows outward continuously, nourishing everything along its banks. Most people are living as drains. They take in obligations, they take in other people's emergencies, they take in the world's needs, and they have no source, they have no reservoir, they have no depth. Because they never went inward long enough to find the spring. Go find the spring. Go into the silence and find where your water comes from. Find the place inside you where purpose lives, not the purpose that was assigned to you, not the purpose that was convenient for others, but the purpose that was written into you before you were born. The purpose that makes you feel, when you are walking in it, like you are finally operating at the frequency you were designed for. That discovery, that single act of profound self-excavation, is worth more than 1,000 years of being available to everyone else. I want to leave you with this. The most dangerous human being on the face of this earth is not a person with a weapon. It is not a person with an army. It is not even a person with unlimited financial resources. The most dangerous person on this earth is a human being who has discovered who they are. Because a person who knows who they are cannot be manipulated, they cannot be distracted, they cannot be bought, bribed, seduced away from their course, or broken by rejection, because their identity does not live in the opinions of others. It lives in the bedrock of self-knowledge. And that bedrock does not shift. You become immovable when you know who you are. You become undefeatable when your self-concept is no longer dependent on external confirmation. You become unstoppable when you have decided completely, without reservation, that the full expression of your potential is the most important work of your life. And this is why the world is terrified of truly self-aware people. Because a self-aware person cannot be controlled by guilt. They cannot be manipulated by social pressure. They cannot be kept small by the fear of what others might think. They have stepped outside of the crowd's gravitational pull. And from that position of sovereign self-knowledge, they can see the crowd clearly for the first time. They can see the patterns. They can see the manipulation. They can see the invisible chains that most people wear as though they were ornaments. And they refuse. They simply refuse. Think about yourself. I am saying that with every ounce of sincerity I possess. Think about yourself not out of vanity, not out of pride, not out of indifference to the world, but out of the deep, sacred, urgent recognition that you are the steward of a life that was given to you and to no one else. You are the only person on this planet who can live your life. You are the only person who can fulfill your specific assignment. You are the only one who can build the particular structure that your gifts, your experiences, your perspective, and your purpose are designed to construct. No one can do it for you. And no one will do it for you. And the years are moving. They are not pausing. They are not waiting for you to finish being convenient for everyone else. They are moving at the same pace they have always moved. And every year that passes in which you did not build is a year in Emmanuel's story. A year closer to a graveyard that is richer than it needs to be. Do not die with it still inside you. Do not let them stand over your coffin and say, "He was a good person," while the greatest work of your life remains permanently unbuilt. Do not let the eulogy of your existence be written entirely in terms of what you did for others, while what you were meant to do, the magnificent, the profound, the world-altering thing you were sent here to do, goes unmentioned, because it was never done. Become obsessed with your purpose. Lock yourself in the room of self-examination. Ask the hard questions. Sit with the uncomfortable answers. Build the foundation. Lay the walls. Do not stop building until the structure that was always meant to exist in the world, the structure that only you can design, that only you can build, is standing. Let the world wait while you do that work. Let the noise fade. Let the opinions dissolve. Let the crowd move on without you. Because when you emerge, When you walk out of that room of self-discovery, fully knowing who you are, fully aligned with your purpose, fully committed to the expression of your potential, you will not need the crowd's approval. The work will speak, the building will stand, and the world, the very world that once questioned why you disappeared, will come to live inside what you built. Think about yourself, always, deeply, without apology, without guilt, without ceasing. Because the greatest gift you will ever give this world is not your sacrifice. It is your full, unapologetic, magnificent becoming. I am done.